Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. This is my first question. What will the post-COVID-19 world look like? What opportunities and threats will be presented by the new international environment?
The post-COVID world will introduce a certain number of changes in life of all of us, mainly as far as our personal relations are concerned. As a matter of fact, I am quite optimistic that the science will find some kind of solution to the pandemic, vaccines being the strongest one. But the new international environment has to take into consideration that international institutions must be modernized in order to be up to the situation. The role of G-20 is very important, mainly in the economic scenario at large. And the meeting in Rome on the 30th and 31st of October is the best occasion for discussing welfare, social cohesion, migrations, environment, climate change, financial problems, and global governance. It's a very tough agenda, which should be also including the reform of the WTO and the WHO, the World Health Organization, and the World Trade Organization. G20, of course, cannot find a solution to all the current problems, but can give us a very important contribution to make them easier or more workable. And the first important follow-up will be the Glasgow Conference on Climate Change, which is scheduled for the 1st to 12th of November the next. It is a long work. The targets are ambitious, but there is a general goodwill in order to reach some reasonable results. As far as the role of United Nations, we should be realistic. In these years, it has been quite weak and not very effective. If we want to make it more representative, I think that the Turkish position, the world is bigger than 5, is very correct. And by the way, Italy, I remember, that opposed the reform of the Security Council in the 90s when they wanted to enlarge the Security Council of just for 1 or 2 seats, if I well remember, to Germany and maybe to Japan, because it was a very inappropriate reform. The reform should be much more big. Of course, I am aware that to change the present situation, which reflects a reality which is old of 75 years, will be very difficult, given also the fact that one single veto can block every decision. But if an international organization doesn't work properly, it is necessary to reform it.
COVID-19 pandemic has further exacerbated the conditions of the vulnerable persons, such as refugees. In this regard, regarding the situation of refugees after the pandemic, how to find durable solutions to their problems?
The problem of refugees is an enormous one and cannot be faced by a single state only. It should be treated as an international problem, taking into account one thing, that the refugees are one thing and the economic migrants are another thing. The refugees should be accepted by all the developed countries according to their real capacity. The economic migrants might be accepted, if possible, through legal channels and following the rules of selection decided by every single state. Turkey at the moment is the most generous country in the world, perhaps, hosting more than 4 million refugees. And of course, the European Union should share the burden of expenses, and in some way it does. But it is also time to accelerate a conference on the future of Syria, because the Syrian refugees should go back safely to their country as soon as possible. Now, the main interested countries are Turkey, Russia, United States in a way, but we need an international conference in order to find a solution to this problem.
Thank you. What are the global security challenges in a post-COVID world? What could Turkey's contribution to protecting international peace and security? Which role can Turkey play in the multipolar international system?
Global security is a must for everybody, but realistically, we face every day some risks. COVID has shown us how fragile we are, and this should be a lesson for increasing our contribution to protect international peace and security. But we know that human beings are not always wise, and not always they learn the lessons. So it should mainly be up to the international organization to create the conditions for ensuring a durable peace. But as we know, they are still too fragile to do that properly. So we have to rely on the sense of responsibility of main powers as well. Turkey could surely contribute to protect international peace and security, and I believe that its foreign policy, even if sometimes it is criticized, is aiming to that. Of course, Turkey is like every state, prisoner of the geography, and its geostrategic position is very, very complicated. For this reason, Turkey cannot avoid to keep always in mind its national interest. This is true mainly in the Syrian and Libyan issues, but also in the Eastern Mediterranean and in its relations with the big powers like China, Russia, United States. So the role of Turkey in the international system should be, in my view, strongly connected with the European Union and NATO allies, but European Union and NATO should never forget the strategical peculiarities of Turkey and the national interest she has to protect in order to survive as a strong state. So, for instance, in the Eastern Mediterranean, where Turkey has 1,750 kilometers of coasts, it is essential to ensure a more equitable sharing of gas and hydrocarbon reserves among all the countries. This means that the territorial waters and the exclusive economic zones must take into account the rights of Turkey as well, and the situation in Cyprus, where there are two different entities and not only one.
What could be the long-term regional effects of the US and NATO withdrawal and Taliban resurgence in Afghanistan? How can international cooperation be ensured for alleviating the effects of the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan?
Afghanistan, we must be sincere, has been a failure of the West. 20 years of NATO military presence there did something against terrorism, but at the end of the day, they did nothing to change and better the condition of Afghan people, neither of the women who are back to the Middle Ages, nor of the young generation, which is hopeless. So the Taliban resurgence is a very serious issue, but maybe Turkey, for obvious reasons, might be the country which can contribute more than others to the stability of Afghanistan. It will not be easy at all, but at least the dialogue has started with the recent visit of a Taliban delegation to Istanbul. From one side, it is important to ensure an international cooperation for alleviating the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. From the other, we must be absolutely sure that our help goes directly to the people and not to the regime, just to be clear. And again, it will not be easy. Next G20 meeting in Rome has in agenda Afghanistan as well. We will see what will come out in order to reinforce the suggestions and the ideas discussed in the previous extraordinary G20 video conference on Afghanistan promoted by Italy on October 12. If I well remember, President Erdogan said on that occasion that Turkey cannot afford another wave of migrants from Afghanistan and proposed the establishment of a working group on migrations. He also reminded that in Afghanistan we have to face a new political reality and all the channels of dialogue should be kept open because we cannot abandon a country which has suffered 40 years of war. I agree on that, and if I can add something, I also believe that it will be important to avoid that Afghanistan might become again a base for terrorists.
How could Turkey continue contributing to the stability of Afghanistan?
Well, I think Turkey can keep the dialogue open. This does not mean that we have to recognize the present government in Afghanistan, but as a matter of fact, as they are there, it is necessary to have discussions, meetings, a dialogue with them in order to be sure that from one side the terrorism will be confined in the most remote corner as possible, and on the other side to be sure that they can accept the fact that an international help is necessary for the people, maybe through humanitarian organization, to some NGO, not at an official level.